Now, even though Joseph and Mary weren't living together, their relationship was understood to be a marriage in every other respect. So Mary's pregnancy was the result of adultery as far as the laws were concerned. Therefore, Joseph was well within his rights to abandon Mary and send her on her way without any sort of support. She would have been on her own, an outcast, forced to scrounge up some sort of living for herself and her child. Joseph could have seen to it that Mary was stoned to death, since she had disgraced his family and himself. Poor old Joseph. All he may have desired was a quiet, normal life in Nazareth. He just wanted to have a wife and family, go to work every morning, come home at night to spend time with Mary and the children. Instead, he was faced with this dreadful dilemma. What was he going to do about Mary and the child? How could he save face and regain the respect of his family and neighbors in town? Well, I don't think it's any wonder that we don't hear much about Joseph whenever the Christmas story is told. Joseph just sort of lurks on the fringes of the story. It's Mary that we hear from every year. We know how the angel Gabriel came to her in a dream and told her that she would give birth to the Messiah. Hooray for Mary, we shout. And according to the story, Mary sings for joy. She's thrilled about this turn of events. Yet Joseph is anything but thrilled. He has to make some difficult choices. And as it turns out, he decides to let Mary go quietly, divorcing her with no public spectacle. From Joseph's point of view, it was the right choice to make. So at the end of a terrible day, Joseph finally falls onto his sleeping pallet, exhausted and filled with disappointment. And then it happened. That same angel who visited Mary and her relative Elizabeth, that good old ever-traveling angel Gabriel, appears to Joseph as he's snoring away. And this is where the story can go either way. First, our friendly angel Gabe reassures Joseph by telling him not to be afraid. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear "don't be afraid," I can feel those little hairs on the back of my neck begin to stand up straight as I experience fear grabbing hold of me. Well, anyway, as Gabe is telling Joseph to relax, our friend Joseph is probably doing just the opposite. Fortunately, that doesn't stop Gabriel. He has a message to give Joseph, and by golly, that's just what he's going to do. Gabe tells Joseph it's okay to take Mary as his wife, that the baby she's carrying has been conceived through the Holy Spirit, and it's important that Joseph adopt this child as his own, because that way Jesus will be part of the house of David, David's family, as the prophets said. You see, Matthew goes to great lengths to point out that Jesus is part of King David's family tree. That, friends, was a very big deal in those days. Anyway, so now we have dear old Joseph scratching his beard, trying to decide if Gabriel and all he had to say is for real or not. So here's the thing. If Joseph believes Gabriel, everything is on. The story can continue. Mary will have a home and a family, and her child will be born as a son of David. If Joseph doesn't believe, then everything grinds to a halt. If Joseph wakes up from his dream, shakes his head, and goes to the courthouse to file divorce papers, then Mary is an outcast forever. But if Joseph Joseph accepts Mary as her child, then the child is named and claimed as Joseph's offspring. Well, fortunately, we know which way Joseph decided to go. He believed Gabriel, and so Mary gave Jesus life, and Joseph gave him his name. Jesus, son of David, from whose house the Messiah shall come. Joseph decided to claim the mess, the scandal, the dirty looks, and the whispers. He takes it all on, even though it wasn't the life he had planned for himself. Suddenly, Joseph finds himself building a crib, running out to Toys R Us to look at all the baby stuff, the baby kind toys, or maybe he's even asking other dads to show him how to change swaddling clothes. In a matter of a few hours, Joseph's entire world is turned upside down, and he understood that life is filled with unplanned and unexpected, and sometimes when we meet the unexpected, our point of view can change, and so can our lives. So here's today's story. It's told by a pastor who served a small church in Iowa. It's all about a change of plans that changed perspectives as well. It all started when Doris Mulford swept into the pastor's office one Tuesday morning in November. "Pastor, we have a problem." The pastor said she took a deep breath and braced herself for whatever might be in Doris's bonnet. Doris is related to half the congregation in one way or another, and her family has been part of the congregation for generations. Doris is a big-hearted lady. She watches out for everyone, whether they want her to or not. She also is very helpful at pointing out every problem, real or imagined, that might exist in the congregation. Doris has the reputation of being a bit strict, some say even rigid. The word around town is that when she first saw the scene in the movie The Sound of Music, where the captain blows different notes on his whistle to summon his children, remember that part? Doris thought it was a wonderful idea, so she adopted the practice herself. Everyone in Doris's household, children, pets, and husband, all had their own special whistle tone. And these days, to no one's surprise, her children live out of state, and her husband, Frank, is almost deaf as a post. Anyway, the pastor asked Doris about her problem. "Well," Doris replied, "it's the live nativity. Charlie Davis has a lot of pain in his knees, and he just can't kneel down to offer the frankincense. And Joe Dixon is having back problems again, so I don't think he can play Joseph this year. And finally, after 27 years, I think it might be time for me to hand over the reins to someone else." "Are you sure, Doris?" "Yes, it's time. I'll still help out, though. I have a whole file filled with notes and ideas from over the years. I'll be happy to train my replacement. I wouldn't want anything to change. Don't want to disappoint anyone. I just don't know who you'll be able to get them." "Well, no one will be able to do it quite like you do," Doris replied the pastor, "but we'll manage somehow." In fact, the pastor had someone in mind, two people actually. Just the week before, two of the congregation's newer members, young mothers named Mindy Jones and Jody Young, had come to the pastor about the live nativity. They had lots of ideas about ways it could be improved and involve more people, especially children. Live nativity hadn't changed in 27 years. Doris always directed, and she always recruited people from her large extended family to play the parts. There's Mary, Joseph, two shepherds, 3 wise men, and an old Cabbage Patch doll who plays the role of Jesus. There are some animals scattered around the makeshift stable, but they are the plastic kind. The ones that light up. Real animals would just make too big a mess. There are never any children involved, not even as angels, because, as Doris points out, children are harder to control than the animals. So few children respond to a whistle these days, she said. The live nativity is held on a Saturday afternoon, sometime close to Christmas, from 5 to 6 o'clock, exactly. For 1 hour, 7 people and a Cabbage Patch doll stand absolutely frozen in a tableau surrounded by plastic glowing animals. At precisely 6 o'clock, they break their hopes and go over to Doris's house for hot chocolate and cookies. That's how it's been done for 27 years. Well, Mindy and Jody visited with the pastor and wondered about making some changes. They thought they would include some of the children as angels and shepherds. The elementary school's only a block away, so Mindy and Jody thought they could do the nativity on a Friday afternoon so the kids could come over after school. And they asked, why not use some real animals? Maybe they could reschedule the time so people could drive by after work or after dinner with their families. Then to finish off the evening, everyone could walk into the sanctuary to sing some carols and listen to the Christmas story together. All of these changes sounded really good to the pastor, so she offered them the job. Mindy and Jody were thrilled. A meeting with Doris was scheduled for the coffee hour following that Sunday's worship. The pastor watched for the distance as Doris went over everything in her notebook, explaining exactly what she had done for 27 years and exactly what needed to be done to keep things exactly the same. Then Mindy and Joseph rattled off all of their ideas, and to a quiet, still face Doris. So it wasn't any surprise that the pastor found Doris waiting for her on Monday morning. Pastor, we have a problem. Seems to be the problem, Doris. I'm very concerned about Mindy and Jody, she said, hissing their names through tightly pursed lips. They seem to have a lot of changes in mind for the live nativity. Well, replied the pastor, sometimes changes can be good. But it doesn't need to be changed. It's fine the way it is. We've been doing the live nativity like that for 27 years. People expect it to be a certain way. We don't want to disappoint anyone, do we? The pastor responded, I think it'll be fine, Doris. Let's give it a chance and see what happens. The pastor said she didn't hear much from Doris over the next few weeks. Once in a while, she caught Doris scowling in Mindy and Jody's direction at the coffee hour as new people were recruited to help with the live nativity. Everything seemed to be going well. The new plans included live animals supplied by the church custodian, Carol, as well as additional roles for the children as angels and shepherds. And after some biblical consultation, it was decided that more wise men should be added, since the original story never specified the number. Check it out in Matthew for yourself. And because some of the women of the church had been to Africa on a mission trip and came back with some gorgeous gowns, they even managed to sneak some wise women into the lineup as well. A group of retired men who had coffee at McDonald's every morning got together and designed a wonderful light display depicting the events leading up to Jesus' birth, and installed it in the church's front yard to encourage drive-by guests. The local paper even came by and wrote a front page article. But by far, the most interesting and for some people eyebrow-raising change was the Holy Family itself. Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus were being played by a young couple named Rob and Corey and their little girl, Laura. They were now new members of the church, having been married in the church last June. The baby Laura was baptized in late October. You do the math. Everyone in town ignored that fact until Doris was kind enough to remind everybody. Mindy and Jody had taken young Corey under their wing, loaning her baby clothes and supplies, and showed her the ropes of motherhood. They thought that Corey and Laura were perfect by the young mother and baby Jesus. Well, the big day arrived, and the results were impressive. It seemed as though everyone in the congregation, and even people from outside the congregation, had something to do with the live nativity. 60 or so people, a dozen angels with their parents, and another dozen shepherds, some with costumes they had thrown together themselves with whatever they could find, were gathered on the church's front lawn. Several neighborhood dogs even came by to check out the live sheep and cows. A campfire was built in front of the makeshift stable, and some kind soul set up a card table and loaded it with hot chocolate and cookies. It didn't take long before everyone was laughing and toasting marshmallows in their bathrobe costumes. Friends and neighbors drove up the church driveway enjoying the lights, and most of them hung around to talk and take pictures. By the time 8 o'clock rolled around, there must have been 150 people standing around the little stable. Everyone eventually got together and began parading into the church. The angels, shepherds, the wise men, and the wise women all took their places on the steps of the chancel as friends and neighbors streamed into the pews, smelling of campfire and hay. Every seat was filled as Joseph led the donkey down the center aisle with Mary astride, gently holding her baby. Everything was going according to plan until the Holy Family reached the front of the church. For some reason, the donkey got spooked and took off at a trot up the side aisle. The congregation gasped at the look of terror on Mary's face as the donkey jogged around the church. Poor Mary was clutching her baby in one hand and the donkey's mane in the other, as half a dozen men slowed the frightened animal, and coaxed it back up front to the front, where Mary was only too happy to dismount. Pastor offered a greeting and words of thanks to everyone who had worked so hard. After a brief prayer, carols were sung, and then one by one, the children dressed as angels and shepherds read their verses of the Christmas story to a sea of smiling faces and waving parents. Then, just as the wise men and women were about to offer their gifts, little Laura, playing the role of baby Jesus, started to get a little fussy. First, she just squeaked and gurgled a bit. Then she squealed and cried just a bit louder. Then she let loose a full-throated scream as she reached up and grabbed her mother's lower lip with a vice-like baby grip. You know what that is. Eventually, Mary got the situation under control when Joseph pulled the bottle from under his bathrobe costume. And that's when it happened. It's the sort of moment you just can't control. The little girl in the back corner of the sanctuary said in a voice the entire congregation could hear, "Mommy, it's a real baby in the manger." pastor said it